The MLS Block Party that took place in downtown Sacramento, April 2016, was seen as a game-changing moment for the capital sports scene. It was a moment that made many out there, including yours truly, believe it was a matter of when and not if the capital would land its very own MLS expansion franchise. The town came close. There were some shenanigans along the way, things outside of fans' control, but 9 years later, it feels like the win is never, and the if has become a resounding no. The wild thing is, that was not Sacramento's first attempt at landing a Major League Soccer expansion franchise. In fact, the city's efforts date all the way back to 1993. Oh yes, 1993 in Sacramento.
Sacramento is events, and hardly a day goes by when something isn't happening.
Stan Atkinson was heading into his 25th year as lead anchor for KCRA. Spoiler alert, Atkinson doesn't get to that 26th anniversary after switching the NBC affiliate for KOVR, the CBS station in town, during 94. Nick Monroe left Quad 106.5 midway through 93, only to return later, ensuring Sacramentans could spend the next decade guessing what was in his pocket. And finally, there were those Cops episodes that aired during the fall of 93, featuring our fair city, showcasing the best we truly had to offer.
You want a big white cow?
A big white cow? Do I own one?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
I'm not entirely sure our town ever recovered from those broadcasts, but, Sacramento County sheriffs chasing down cows aside, this is also perhaps one of the most interesting times to be a Sacramento sports fan. Al Davis burned Sacktown in its attempts to bring him and the Raiders to Arco Park. For whatever reason, the town was like, screw Davis, we're just going to find whatever scraps, whatever rebounds we can and plow.
I got my Magnum condoms, I got my Wad 100s, I'm ready to plow.
Is that line in bad taste? Maybe a little bit, but it's also wildly apt. Here, Sacramento wanted sports. It had a hunger for sports. It didn't care if it was scraps, thirds, fourths. It just was irrelevant to the town. So Sacramento plowed and plowed and plowed some more. The city landed seemingly every alt sport imaginable in the aftermath of the Raiders spurning us. There's indoor soccer and team tennis. We're the first American city to have Canadian football. And just about every alternative sports league out there had circled Sacramento on its list of potential new markets. The situation became so absurd that B columnist Ari Grasswich went on to call Sacramento the trash sports capital of the world. This is somewhat of a loving moniker and really just an acceptance of the situation. Sort of like, yeah, these teams, these leagues are fly-by-night and very stupid, but you know what? They're still Sacramento's stupid team in a stupid league. So why not try to land a franchise in an upstart outdoor soccer league? Oh yeah, about that phrase, by the way. The local media in Sacramento exclusively refers to Major League Soccer as an outdoor soccer league. That's because Sacramento has an indoor soccer team in the form of the Knights. Even then, it's still weird just to see this usage of outdoor soccer league because the sport was just so under the radar. As for that newfangled outdoor soccer league, it was in the midst of trying to push through a disheveled and ultimately unsuccessful 1995 launch ahead of the World Cup. That kicked off in June of 1994, so in December 1993, MLS officials sounded out 31 cities to be potential expansion candidates, and what do you know, Sacramento was among those. The city of Trees was selected because it had one of the most expansive youth soccer setups in all of America around this time, with more than 130,000 kids playing in leagues across the greater metro area. The idea is if you could tap into that, if you could get kids and parents to attend outdoor soccer games, I've got to stop using that phrase, but if you could get them to attend MLS games, well, Sacramento would have something. And of course, the city was also home to the 1979 American Soccer League champion Sacramento Gold, so there was that too. In order to pass through the first phase of MLS Survivor, applicant cities needed to secure 10,000 season ticket deposits, with each one being $75 a pop. For Sacramentans, that deposit was going for season tickets in a yet-to-be-determined venue. Officials were like, we could maybe play in Hornet Stadium, or maybe we could play in Hughes Stadium. It was basically dismissed as this secondary issue, like we'll figure it out later on. The fact that Sac Republic would go on to play their first season in the USL at Hughes Stadium should tell you just how little progress was ever made on this, by the way. Back to 93 and early 94, then Sacramento Mayor Joe Cerna Jr. was a massive proponent of bringing a Major League Soccer team to town and sports in general. He was also steadfast in his belief that public funds should not go to any sports team or stadium after the entire Davis debacle, really left everyone in Sacramento with a bad taste in their mouth. This, of course, ends up being a major reason why nothing is ever built at that Natomas site where the foundation was laid for a multi-purpose venue. Meanwhile, the Major League Soccer launch, it's just a total mess. Like, nobody knows what they're doing at any point. In each city, it seems like everyone is having some sort of issue. Some can't secure stadiums. Others are having problems getting people to buy tickets for a league that doesn't exist. Eventually, they end up scrapping the season ticket deposit requirement. Yet nobody knows what the situation is. Nobody knows the state of play because potential expansion cities couldn't reveal how many tickets they had sold. So everyone was left in the dark. It was just nothing but confusion. In Sacramento, it was believed that ticket sales weren't exactly moving like hotcakes. It wasn't for a lack of trying. People were trying to get the word out, but locals remained skeptical on a league that literally had nothing to show them. The entire pitch was along the lines of, hey, do you know that World Cup that's coming up soon? Well, our league is going to be potentially similar to things you may or may not see during that World Cup, which again has yet to be played. If that wasn't bad enough, there were other things happening in Sacramento that were distracting from the town's MLS push. Sacramento gold miners owner Fred Anderson, who was in the midst of losing money hand over fist on his Canadian football dream, was also trying to get people on board with a pitch to steal the Modesto A's and move them to a ballpark in the Natomas that didn't exist. Anderson said he was going to build it with his own money, despite the fact that, one, he was constantly saying he was going to build things with his own money, and they never came to fruition, and two, having several detailed meetings with city officials trying to get any handout he could. His story, though, is one for another day when we talk about the surge and gold miners. Elsewhere in Sacramento, the trash sports have proliferated and people have options. The Sacramento Knights and Capitals were around. As the MLS campaign was ongoing, it was announced the roller hockey playing Sacramento River Rats would join the city's sporting scene in '95. In other words, garbage or not, there were a lot of sporting options for locals to choose from. As part of the efforts to promote the city's MLS bid and the 1994 World Cup at large, Thomas Dooley did a huge PR push around Sacramento and Placer counties. It was a pretty good get, all things considered, although why the Sacramento Bee went with this photo of Dooley using his hands to touch the ball and then referring to him as handling a soccer ball seems, misguided. Work continued on Sacramento's bid, which was being led by the Sacramento Convention and Visitors Bureau and Greg Van Dusen. Van Dusen, an absolute local legend, instrumental in helping the town secure the Kings and getting Arco Arena built. Having him be a part of these efforts gave the MLS bid credibility, much needed credibility. Sadly for Van Dusen, ticket sales never really picked up as the '94 World Cup approached and the announcement date for MLS expansion franchises. It was believed that he had managed to secure somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 season ticket deposits. By this time, that list of 31 potential expansion candidates had been pared down to 27, but no one really knew how the ticket sales would impact Sacramento's attempt to be one of the 12 selected for an MLS franchise. As announcement day nears, the entire process, which had been slapdash to begin with, takes some odd twists and turns. U.S. soccer boss Alan Rothberg said maybe they wouldn't announce all 12 teams at the planned June press conference. Talk of New York getting 2 teams, including one on Long Island, also picked up steam. Just before the announcement date, the town received some positive news that they were a leading candidate to receive one of the 12 MLS expansion franchises. Despite this positive feedback, everyone in Sacramento is on pins and needles because the league itself is just flying by the seat of its pants. No one knows what exactly it's going to announce when it comes time to reveal the expansion cities. But hey, if Sacramento didn't get an MLS team, well, there was this silver lining. Folks could drown their sorrows away at Sacramento's newest gentlemen's club. I struggle to process the thought of someone bringing a newspaper ad to gain free admission into a titty bar. Also, let's talk about the location of said titty bar because it is now home to the site of Second Slavic Baptist Church. They did raise it and build the church up from the ground up, so it's not a church in a strip club. Anyway, as June 16th approaches, the day, the MLS will unveil the cities which will be joining its newfangled outdoor soccer league. Gotta stop doing that. Uncertainty would turn into disappointment. The results were inconclusive. MLS goes on to announce 7 expansion cities: Boston, Columbus, LA, San Jose, Washington, D.C., East Rutherford, New Jersey, and Long Island. It was not all bad news. The MLS was still committed to 12 teams, and that left 5 places up for grabs. They also eliminated a handful of other cities, which meant now there were going to be 11 cities vying for those last 5 places in the league. With that knowledge, league officials told the remaining candidates to go out and sell some season ticket deposits. And what do you know? With the World Cup 1994 approaching, it may be a little easier to convince people to sign up. Nothing wrong with tapping into a little football fever. The second round of announcements were supposed to be made in August after World Cup 94 had concluded, but that got delayed. Some cities were having issues with finding a place to play. Other towns, like Sacramento, just couldn't find buyers for season tickets to, again, a league that didn't exist. MLS first part, though, it had much bigger fish to fry. They had no players under contract, very few investors, and seemingly little tangible to show for their efforts midway through September, apart from those announced expansion cities. Things are all over the shop for the league at this point in time. MLS seemingly rejects its own expansion process and approaches the American Soccer League about a potential merger. An offer the ASL rebuffs. I sure hope that works out for you. As things are going off the rails, eventually someone from Major League Soccer offices reaches out to Sacramento to tell the city their expansion bid is ultimately going to fail. How nice of them. Finally, the league has something to tell people. The first is that they're delaying the launch by a year, so it would no longer kick off in 95, but it would be moved to 96. Second, the 7th and 8th franchises would be located in Tampa and Chicago. Of course, Chicago had not been among the 31 cities sounded out about a potential expansion franchise, and at no point were ever part of the expansion process, proving that those running Major League Soccer were more than happy to waste everyone's time and willingness to put down a season ticket deposit. Oh yeah, also, the league announces that there's only going to be 10 teams instead of 12. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, wait, Chicago didn't join the MLS until 1998. That is correct. A few months down the track, the Chicago and Long Island franchises are scrapped entirely. They were replaced with Denver, Kansas City, and Dallas, all 3 of which were on the list of 11 finalists alongside Sacramento. At some point, as all of this was going down, MLS just shelved the Sacramento expansion bid, believing the city could not support soccer. Was that right or wrong? I don't know. Who's to say? Sacramento did, though, receive an expansion franchise, albeit one you probably don't necessarily remember. The Sacramento Scorpions launched in 1996 and spent some time in the United Systems of Independent Soccer Leagues. They were affiliated with the LA Galaxy for a moment in time. The Scorpions didn't do so bad early on in their tenure. In fact, 3,000 folks showed up for their inaugural game in town, but interest dwindled and they didn't make it out of the 1990s. As annoying as it was to see Sacramento score a massive own goal with its most recent MLS bid, which sees the city now on the outside looking in, the 90s miss is far more frustrating to me because so much was out of the city's control. Look, season ticket deposits were not great, but that was an issue in several other expansion candidate cities. Outside New York, San Jose, LA, and Columbus, it was really hard to sell people on a team that doesn't exist playing in a league that doesn't exist. And it's not like PR surrounding the MLS was great. Like, they had a presence at the World Cup 94, but delaying the launch by 1 and eventually 2 years was going to do little to get people on board with what they were doing. There were no players to sell folks on, and the marketing materials cities did get were extremely generic.
So guess who decides if our city gets a team? You do.
Seriously, I'm surprised the MLS wasn't also asking people to mail in post-serial top boxes for extra bonus expansion points. I find it really hard to blame Sacramento for not diving headfirst into this endeavor, even with the region's huge soccer playing youth setup during the 90s. Also, let's not forget the Sacramento Knights were kind of a big deal around this time. Why do you need outdoor soccer when you already have an indoor team to watch? In hindsight, that doesn't hold up. indoor soccer just ends up disappearing around Y2K, but you can't blame some folks for believing that at the time. The one thing I struggle with as it relates to that Sacramento 1990s MLS bid is the team either playing in Hornet Stadium or Hughes Stadium. I mean, even in the 90s, I just don't see it. Sure, running tracks around soccer pitches may have still been in vogue in Serie A at the time, but these were just such uninspiring choices. They didn't have huge capacities. I don't think it would have fit with the direction MLS ultimately chose. Whatever the case may be, though, Sacramento was never given its chance to prove itself as a soccer town. Though, given the fact Long Island and Chicago were chosen as expansion cities and then had those sort of teams taken away from them before the league launched, it really feels like those in charge of Major League Soccer had absolutely no idea what they were doing. That cannot be said for Sacramento's second near miss at landing an MLS franchise, which really has everything to do with the city tying its wagon to Ron Burkle and Kevin Nagel. Fan support was there, league support was there, the money, not so much, although they do say the third time is the charm. Really though, honestly, I'm pretty happy as a Sac Republic fan with life in the USL. Give me away days to Oakland and Monterey Bay over trips to Fisher's Funhouse and the club in San Diego that stole the place of the SD Loyal. Sacramento never actually received an MLS expansion franchise in 1994, which is the big difference between that and the 2019 debacle. But both cases do, I think, point up one thing that needs to be said about today. Let's get moving on that Rail Yard Stadium, people. Like, where's the updates? What are we doing here? Can we at least make some progress? Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to know the story of Sacramento's illegal AAA baseball field, check out the video in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. And for the tale of the MLS team that lost its name to an electronics store, that's the video lower left-hand corner of your screen. Until next time, I am Cheyenne Hollis. This is The Touchback, and as always, hashtag take it out, the 25.